איפה שנכנסנו פה לחדרים, מצאנו ממש כאן מרחב אימונים של הארגון, נשקים, מחשב עם תוכנית אימונים ומקרן כדי לעשות כל מיני סיטואציות ולהתאמן.
הרבה מאוד אמצעים אלקטרונים שפה החמאס מתאמן ומכין את המחבלים. בצד השני, בחדר השני, מעבדת אמל"ח.
מצאנו מעבדת מטענים, ממש מאלף ועד תו, סוללות, הכל. זה מה שיש בתוך המסגדים פה, זה מה שיש בכל מסגד ומסגד שאנחנו נכנסים אליו.
The White House expressed concern over reports that Israel used US-supplied white phosphorus in attacks on Lebanon, adding it was seeking more details. The Lebanon accused Israel of repeatedly using the incendiary weapon in October. The Washington Post said the analysis of shell fragments from one attack showed the rounds were US-made.
Obviously, there is a legitimate military use for white phosphorus, but that does not include using them on civilians. It means that if you use them, you have to do everything you can to minimize civilian harm. Anytime that we provide items like white phosphorus or really anything to another military, we do it with the expectation that it will be used for legitimate purposes and in full keeping with international humanitarian law and the law of armed conflicts.
Separately, Israel's military said it was striking the source of munitions fired from Lebanon. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, which is a war monitor, said Israeli strikes late Sunday near Damascus killed 2 Hezbollah fighters and 2 Syrians working with the group. On Monday, a local official in South Lebanon was killed by an Israeli shell. Israel's military said 104 soldiers had been killed and 582 wounded in its Gaza's ground offensive, which began on October 27th. The defense minister said Israel had no intention of staying permanently in the Gaza Strip. Yoav Gallant stated Israel was open to discussing alternatives about who would control the territory as long as it was not a group hostile to Tel Aviv. He said Israel was open to possibly reaching an agreement with Hezbollah on condition any agreement included a safe zone along the border and proper guarantees. The Israeli defense minister also said the next phase of the war would see low-intensity fighting against pockets of resistance. He said Israelis are undermining the last strongholds of Hamas in Jabalia and Shijia, 2 places the battalions of which were considered invincible by Hamas.
Israel will take any measures in order to destroy Hamas, but we have no intention to stay permanently in Gaza Strip. We only take care of our security and the security of our citizens alongside the borders with Gaza and elsewhere.
Palestinians across the West Bank and East Jerusalem staged a general strike on Monday. Shops, schools and government offices shut in solidarity with Gazans. In Lebanon, public institutions, banks, schools and universities also closed. A stoppage was observed in Istanbul's Esenyurt district. Many businesses in the area are owned by Palestinians as well as people from Syria, Yemen and Iran. The World Health Organization Executive Board on Sunday adopted a resolution calling for immediate, unimpeded humanitarian access to Gaza. The WHO chief said medics faced unimaginable conditions. The 34 countries on the board adopted the resolution by consensus, though some, notably US, criticized the dearth of references to the Hamas attacks of October 7th. WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said the board had managed to achieve the first consensus resolution on the conflict. Israel said more aid will enter Gaza as it announced 2 additional checkpoints for examining relief supplies before dispatching them through the Rafah gateway. No new direct crossings will be opened, but the Nitzana and Karim Shalom crossings will be used to carry out checks before sending the trucks through Rafah. The UN General Assembly is set to meet to discuss the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Now, after the US last week vetoed a Security Council resolution for a ceasefire. Diplomatic sources say another ceasefire resolution could be proposed, though General Assembly resolutions are non-binding. On Monday, UN Security Council ambassadors traveled to Egypt to meet Gazan victims of the war in an informal one-day trip organized by Abu Dhabi and Cairo. The European Union's top diplomats said the situation in Gaza is catastrophic and apocalyptic. Joseph Borrell said,
important of the destruction of buildings in Gaza, which is more or less or even greater than the destruction suffered by the German cities during the Second World War, just in order to have an idea of the humanitarian situation that the United Nations has been denouncing on the last days.
The Chinese foreign minister and the Iranian foreign minister exchanged views on the situation in the Gaza Strip. In a phone call, Hossein Amir Abdollahian reportedly told Wang Yi that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu can only survive through continued war.
No power supply, a looming food and water crisis. At least 1.8 million people displaced and over 18,000 killed. As Israel strikes back, the Gaza Strip is living its worst nightmare. Our next report brings you more on the World Food Programme report that now reveals statistics of depleting basic requirements in the Gaza Strip as the war continues. Take a look.
People are so hungry that they're breaking into UN warehouses to take whatever they can find. Families are using seawater to wash, and children continue to remain terrified of death and displacement. This is the fate and routine of Gaza citizens in the 2-month-old war between Israel and Hamas. As the cold sets in, people living in the shadow of the conflict are witnessing nights getting darker than before. During last month's temporary pause in fighting, the World Food Programme conducted a rapid food assessment. The report concluded that the situation in Gaza was alarming. In a statement issued after a visit to Gaza, World Food Programme Deputy Executive Director said Gazans are simply not eating.
About half of the population in Gaza are starving, and the needs that we are meeting is really nothing. The humanitarian operation is collapsing. With the chaos, with this active fighting, it's not possible to do the work that is needed to meet these massive needs.
According to the World Food Programme report, 83% of households in southern Gaza, which was earlier claimed to be a safe zone, has inadequate food consumption, with nearly 38% suffering from severe levels of hunger. Beyond the direct disruption and destruction of food systems due to the conflict, the limited flow of humanitarian aid and the complete halt of commercial goods have now severely affected the movement and households' access to both food and nutritious supplies. In North Gaza, at least 9 out of 10 residents